Welcome to the Rotary Club of Edina, the #1 club in the universe. Yeah, baby. My name is Michael Stanzak, and I'm humbled and honored to serve as your 67th president. And I'm so glad to be back. It seems like I've been gone for months, Paul, but that isn't the case. Thank you for coming out on this frigid Minnesota winter day where we woke up to 13 below. To quote Doug Johnson, it's the hale and hearty that are here. And thank you too for everybody that's on Zoom. We have 15 Zoomers out there, which is great. Hopefully you're sitting by a fire having something warm and good to drink. We have a very interesting meeting planned today with Alfreda Baldwin, who is the board chair from TakeCharge, Minnesota. Turns out Alfreda worked with a dear friend of mine, Peg Milosevic, at Securian, where Alfreda was a chief legal counsel. Thank you all for being here in person, and again for all of you that are joining us on Zoom. Typically, January can be kind of a slow month with not a lot of people doing many things, but not our members, Lisa Walker. Oh no, take a look at this. There are John and Patty Mazzara and their children, Michael and Elizabeth, and they are hiking in the Antelope Mountains in Arizona. What a cool picture. I mean, it looks like they're in the bottom of a canyon or something like that. I don't know. And then there are those of us that love to ski, Hannelore. Those are Kelly Burnett's favorite ski bunnies. Imagine that. That's Elsa and Jack. And they were out skiing as a family in Big Sky, Montana. I don't know, do you know anybody that goes skiing, Steve? No, you don't. Well, I'm not good at skiing, but perhaps I've been. Now, you got to remember what our past president, Steve Slice, said, that grandchildren are so much fun. And there he is with his grandsons. Samuel and Lucas. In fact, Steve is going out to Utah next week to celebrate his granddaughter Charlotte's golden birthday. She'll be 4 on February 4th. And if you want to know about grandchildren, just ask Doug Johnson. He's got 12. Now, we Rotarians know how to have a lot of fun, and there is the Edina Global Scholar Director, Lindsay Smaka, hugging Kayla Beeler, who's next year's gala co-host, and there is our current treasurer, Shelley Loberg. Now, I don't know where they were or what they were doing, but I know they were having fun. Who knows? Maybe there was alcohol involved. I don't know. Good. Speaking of fun, there are a bunch of guys standing on a ledge for the perfect picture in Beaver Creek, Colorado. There's Bill McGreevy, past president Steve Slice, Paul Moody, president-elect Joe Hayes, and then some other guy at the bottom of the mountain. There they are again. It was great fun. So Rotary in the news, I know this goes back a little bit. Is Andre here today? Andre just had a birthday. But anyway, he and Skip Thomas rang the bells. And, you know, I'm kind of going back over this again, but in 4 days, thanks to Don Hallberg and the Edina Rotarians, we raised over $8,000, Jennifer, that we gave to the Salvation Army. You're nodding because you already heard that. Paul Peterson played and froze his fingers. Hannah Brooker played her accordion, and she was inside, it was nice and warm, but she played, and you did a great job. Thank you for helping. Speaking about helping, I'd like to give a special shout out to President-elect Joe Hayes, who covered for me when I was under the weather, and last week, Josh Sprague, who covered for me so I could go on my secret assignment in Colorado. Also, kudos to Josh Sprague. I don't know how many of you know tonight that there are 31 of us that are going to a progressive dinner, Edina Rotarians and families, to 3 black-owned restaurants in North Minneapolis. And bear with me just a second. I had the privilege of going to Guatemala last year for the Water Missions Project, and because I was a president-elect, they wanted me to say something. So what I said was, I have great respect for people to get things done. And Josh certainly gets things done. And through his impetus and the Race and Equity Committee, we're going to go have a great time tonight. So thank you, Josh, for all you do. All right, we got a lot of birthdays, and I can't, just a second. I couldn't see. Mike Hagan, Andre Brewer, Ted Yock, Luther Amundsen, Rick Carlson, Steve Slice coming up on the 23rd, Catherine Gump, Sam Coate, Chris Mazur, Bob Gubrud, Charlie Bear, John Cardell and Michelle Elizabeth on January 30th. Whoops. And the January Rotary anniversaries, look at them. Luther Amundsen, 7 years. Barbara Bjorn, 11. Wooj Bayan, 27. Rick Carlson, 22. Sam Coate, 39. Patty Ellingson Solheim, 28. Catherine Gump, 3 with our club. David Hadsong, 23. Joe Hayes, 22. Doug Johnson, 12. Les Jones, 17. Kevin Call, 13. David Kuntz, 25. Jerry Norton, 22, Royce Bavoka, 7, Steve Slice, 21, and Bob Solheim, where are you, Bob? 32 years. So I just want to give a shout out to all those Rotarians and all the things that they've done with their time, their talent, and their treasure to be members of our club that long. And it also says something about our club, that our club gives a lot of value, and that's why people want to stick around and participate for so long. It takes a village to put on a Rotary meeting. Just ask Doug Johnson, he'll tell you. Helping out at the front desk and doing the guest introductions is Lisa Walker, our future president. Our greeter and invocation and four-way test will be Hannah Laura Brooker. The thanking the speaker will be Raj Kumar. The speaker introduction will be Steve Slice. David Kleins, I saw him walking in here. Thank you for taking notes for the Barkin Review. And Katie Campbell rose to the occasion because Rick Carlson is in Florida and she's here taking pictures to put on social media. You know a lot about social media, Paul Peterson. Oh, I saw your post today. It was great. Thank you, Chris Lukowski and Scott Blake, so much for helping out with the Zoom and the AV and all that kind of stuff. So please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, invocation, and four-way test.
Dear friends, I have been thinking about what happened since the death of Martin Luther King 54 years ago. What would he say to us now? I think he would be astonished that in spite of achieving a number of his goals, that there are still many social ills plaguing us. He would remind us of moral standards such as personal responsibility and self-determination. In order to keep living in freedom, looking back at what worldwide known philosophers have said, Confucius emphasized morality, correctness of social relationships, justice, kindness, and sincerity. Aristotle thought only a person who has a healthy love of self can form a friendship with another person. To overcome our social ills, we need integrity, human dignity, and community. Dear God, let us live according to the words of Apostle Paul as he described in his letter to the Corinthians. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. For now, we see only a reflection of us in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I'm known fully. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Amen. Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And for the three things we have to regard is from the trade test. Is it all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Good afternoon. We have a couple of guests today. Rob, you want to introduce your guest?
So I have Mark Buckney. Yeah, and Mark is a new friend of mine, and I'm just going to let him introduce himself and say something about himself.
Hi, I'm Mark Buckney. We turned it over. Good transition. I'm a member with the Edina Chamber of Commerce. I know Shelley. Rob invited me to come check this out, and I'm a patriot, so I like this sort of venue. So, Mark Buckney.
Welcome. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And Andre, you have a guest?
Yeah, who's coming over here? Hi, Clay Clark. He's a pilot for Delta, American, and United. He's here just to visit. He's from Lexington, Kentucky. So.
Great. Well, great. Any other guests today? Okay, well, a special welcome to Clay and Mark. Thank you.
Hello everyone. We have an announcement. It's not announcement, but we are going to have a bowling day, BOWLING, just in case if you don't understand my English. Anyway, it is February 5th, and it's a Saturday, and it is going to be at the Turtles in Hopkins. Please bring your spouses and bring your friends, and it's gonna be fun. I was there like a couple of years ago. We eat and we drink and laugh and compete with everybody else. So please sign up on the register on our website. Okay, please. Thank you.
Rumor has it we're going to have valuable prizes there that all you have to do is have your name pulled out, Hannah Laura, and you can win a valuable prize. So Steve Slice was born and raised in Minnetonka. He graduated from Hopkins Lindbergh High School in 1974 and Hennepin Technical Center in 1976. His first job was in Edina at National Food Store at 50th in France, that's now Lund's, when he was in 9th grade. He's been married to his wife Nancy since 1985. They have 2 daughters and 3 grandchildren. He retired from running Peter's Billiards in April 2021 after 44 years. He joined Edina Rotary in 2001 and served as its president in 2013-2014. You will never find a kinder, more conscientious person than my friend and fellow Rotarian, Steve Slice.
Thank you, Michael. Such kind words. Pretty impressive list of anniversaries, Rotary members, long-term members here. That's pretty neat to see. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Alfreda Baldwin. And she's a native of Chicago, so she's used to this weather, and we thank you for making that trek here today on this cold day. She's a retired attorney. She was in-house counsel at Securing Financial for 32 years. We talked earlier. She's really not, her bio says after retirement, but she really hasn't retired. She keeps pretty busy. She started volunteering in her school district. Being with elementary students caused her to reflect on the education she had received while attending a Lutheran grade school. It led her to want to start a Christian school accessible to families of all ethnic and financial backgrounds. In September of 2021, she opened Laurel Community School, a K-8 micro school. She serves on the board of the directors of the Minnesota South District of Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. She's also board chair of TakeCharge Minnesota, which she'll be talking about that today, an organization dedicated to restoring the Black community's cultural roots of faith, family, and education. We also talked earlier, she has been married for approximately 41 years, and she has 2 adult children, and she is expecting her second grandchild coming up here in March. So please give a warm Edina Rotary welcome to Alfreda Baldwin.
Good afternoon, and thank you for that introduction. and thank you for inviting me to speak. Do I need to pull this down?
Yes.
Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today about Take Charge. A couple of things. I heard of Rotary in the past, and I honestly thought it was a bunch of old men meeting and having coffee and being really boring. No, I am astonished. This sounds like it's a party club. I have been missing out on something. No, I don't ski, but I do like a martini, so maybe I fit right in. I don't know. The other thing I have to say is kudos to all of you that have braved the cold to come out in person today. I was born in Chicago and grew up in the burbs, and when I was in law school, I proclaimed that I was going to marry a man from California so that I could get out of the cold. I married a man from St. Paul, and I had been here in the summer and thought it was lovely, and he said, let's go back to Minnesota, and I said, sure. And I got here and discovered winter. So I applaud all of you that have made it out here today in person. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Take Charge. It is an organization that is about a year old and was founded by a man named Kendall Qualls. Kendall was supposed to be here today, but he recently announced that he is running for governor, and so I am filling in for him. He had been the president and executive director of Take Charge, but because Take Charge is a nonprofit, obviously they can't be involved in politics, so he has stepped away. His wife Sheila has taken over as executive director, and I have become the chair of the board. And when Kendall asked me if I would take on that role, my plate is full. I am supposed to be retired. I retired in 2013, but I discovered that there was something wrong in education, and I decided I wanted to start a school. So this fall, I opened Laurel Community School, and that has become a full-time job. So I said to him, the only reason I was willing to do this was because I believed so deeply that Take Charge is so necessary, and I believe that the message that it wants to get out in America is so vitally important at this point in time. If you're not familiar with Take Charge or Kendall Qualls, he is a black man who ran for Congress in the 3rd District. He was unsuccessful, but he has a remarkable life story that made him believe, as I do, that America is a land of promise and that we can all achieve what we want to achieve if we stick to some core values. We've gotten away from those core values, and his point in starting Take Charge was to reignite a conversation around what really is going to help the black community move forward, and to educate blacks and really all of Americans as to what will help us move forward. So usually when Kendall speaks, he tells his story. I'm going to tell mine very quickly, and I don't have a clock or a watch, so somebody tell me to move it along if I need to. So I was born in Chicago. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I am the youngest of 3 children. My father was a World War II vet. He was born in the North. My mother was born in the South. They met before the war. He came home at the end of the war, and they got married, and they moved north to Chicago. Shortly before I was born, they bought a home in a working class black neighborhood in the suburbs of Chicago, and that's where I grew up. Our community was a neighborhood of families, moms and dads and kids. Property was well maintained. There was little crime. And my parents valued education, and they valued hard work. And what they taught me was that if I applied myself, I could be anything I wanted to be. They didn't sugarcoat the reality of America. I was told to expect that I would run into people who, as they referred to them, would be prejudiced or bigoted. But those things were only obstacles to be overcome. They were not insurmountable barriers. So it wasn't until I had retired, actually, that I discovered that because I'm a black woman in America, I'm an oppressed victim. All the things that I've accomplished, apparently I should not have been able to accomplish, because every problem confronting Black America is due to systemic racism. Every disparity is due to white privilege. And even if white people don't know it, their actions and attitudes are holding me back and holding the Black population back. For the past few years, especially since the death of George Floyd, that has been the narrative in this country. If you're like me, whose life doesn't support that narrative, it's really too bad. You know, ordinarily we're supposed to listen to Black voices, but not when they're mine. Not when it's Kendall saying, yeah, I had this rough start, but I ended up as an executive in Fortune 500 companies and a success. We're just all supposed to be quiet. And quite honestly, I think Kendall was tired of that, and that's why he started TakeCharge. And so what we think at TakeCharge isn't that racism doesn't exist. There are racist people, but we don't think America is structurally racist. There was a time with Jim Crow and slavery. That was institutional racism. That's gone. These individual racist people, if you're a Christian, you know that's sin. That's not going away until the second coming. So we live with it and we don't let it hold us back. So if it's not structural racism that is the problem in America, in the Black community, what is? Let me just, oops, I think I went the wrong way. Yep, there we go. So, our cultural roots are faith, family, and education. That's what I grew up with. Going to church, reading the Bible, knowing right from wrong. Fathers in the home. It was a rare household in my neighborhood that did not have a father. And then education. Somebody was always asking you, how are you doing in school? What are your grades? What are you going to be when you grow up? And your answer wasn't a basketball player or a musician. It was a doctor or a lawyer, or if you were slumming, a teacher. And I don't mean that to disparage teachers. It's just everyone aspired to that professional class. That culture disappeared. Why? At TakeCharge, we believe that social welfare programs produce changes in human behavior that weakened our traditional Black culture. So if you look at this slide, and by the way, these are slides that Kendall put together. You can tell because I'm not a math person. That's why I became a lawyer, because I didn't have to do math. But he is a numbers guy, and his thing is, if you look at the data, it tells you a different story than the narrative. So if you look at this data, there's a circle around roughly 1965, and there's a reference on the slide to the Moynihan Report. That is a report that was produced by Daniel Patrick Moynihan for President Johnson, and it talked about the state of Black America, or what he referred to at the time as the Negro family. And what he pointed to was the out-of-wedlock birth rate at that point in time, which was around 25%. And Moynihan warned that if that wasn't corrected, it was going to be a disaster. His report, well, he was demonized for his report. He was accused of blaming the victim. But look at the trend line. From 25%, just continually escalating for the next 50 years or so. And the interesting thing, if you notice, that trend line is going up for everybody. So at this point, the out-of-wedlock birth rate for white women is higher than it was back in 1965 at the time of the Moynihan Report. So what happened was, LBJ came in with the Great Society, which some of you are old enough to remember was the set of welfare programs that was going to eliminate poverty. Oops, I went too far. But what those programs did was it basically paid women to have children and not marry the fathers. You could not get money from the government if there was a man in the household. I was having a conversation with my brother about this just recently, and he was saying how he would remember people saying the welfare people are coming from the government. We got to get whoever out of the house. So you have the marriage rate, which for black families had been comparable to the white marriage rate. You can see the trend line. It's trending downwards. So now you have a decline in marriage, and you have all these homes where fathers are absent. At this point in time, I believe the statistic is that somewhere around 90% of households in Minneapolis are headed by women who are not married. So you say, okay, who cares? Because there's some talk now about we don't need the nuclear family. But here's what happens when you don't have fathers. This slide is kind of small, so you may not be able to see it, but well, again, we have data. Not my thing, but the numbers tell the story. You're 4 times greater, at a 4-time greater risk of living in poverty if you're in a fatherless home. If you're a girl, you're 7 times more likely to become pregnant as a teenager. You're more likely to have behavioral problems, more likely to face abuse and neglect. Infant mortality is higher. You're more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol, more likely to go to prison, more likely to suffer from obesity, and more likely to commit crimes, and 2 times more likely to drop out of high school. That's a recipe for disaster. If you've got 90% of families living under those circumstances, what would you expect to have but disparities in education and income and health and incarceration? And it's generational. Just one more slide with data just to make a point. This is a slide showing black family income, married couple versus family or a household headed by a woman unmarried. This is from 2017. Your income is almost double if you are married. So one of the things you hear a lot about is black home ownership is low. Well, I looked it up, and in 2017 in Minneapolis, the median price of a house was around $225,000. If I am a single mother, how am I going to afford a house? I have a much better chance of owning a home if I am married. And owning your own home affords you a certain way of life. I know that because that's where I grew up, in a stable home with 2 parents in their own home, in a neighborhood full of people who owned their own home and had mom and dad. So the message we are getting is that it's race, just the way we were all born, that has us divided. You're either oppressed or you're an oppressor. And most people don't want to look at the data. But TakeCharge does. And TakeCharge wants to educate people and start a different conversation. I keep saying we're having conversations about race, but how can they be honest conversations if people like me don't get to contribute to the conversation? And that's what TakeCharge wants to change. So, again, this slide is smaller than I thought it would be. TakeCharge has these pillars that kind of are the foundation of the mission. And the first pillar is that the promise of America works for everyone. You know, do we have issues? We're always going to have issues, but fundamentally we believe that America has the opportunity to work for everyone. We believe the private sector is the fastest way from poverty to prosperity. Johnson's Great Society came in about 1966. I think the Civil Rights Act was 64. I think Great Society legislation came in about 65. It's basically my entire life, except for the first decade or so. We haven't gone in a trajectory of improvement. It's gone the other way. So Government's not helping, but we think the private sector can make the difference. The third pillar is that a solid education is a ticket to a better life. That's what my parents believed, that's what my grandparents believed, that's what I believe. We need good schools. I could do a whole presentation on how we don't have good schools, especially in urban areas. There are so many black children trapped in schools where you look at the test scores, and I don't sleep at night worrying about my little private school. And I know we are really working hard and trying to do a good job. I can't imagine working in one of those schools with those bad test scores and not just being sickened by the fact that I was not helping the children. So we think what's going on in education has to change. We are a supporter of school choice. Let parents have the opportunity to find a school that fits their child and will give their child the education they need to get ahead. We believe that rebuilding the two-parent black family is of paramount importance. We need to get our fathers back in the home. And then we believe we have to focus on public safety. As you might imagine, TakeCharge is not a fan of defund the police. Those neighborhoods where there are a lot of police, there are a lot of police there for a reason. And to defund the police and leave people without protection is just morally wrong to me. Do we need good police? Absolutely. Just like we need good lawyers, good people who cut your hair. Their job is a lot more serious than that, but we can't demonize them, we can't defund them. So one of the things TakeCharge is doing is trying to use the power of social media to stir people, to educate them, to start this different conversation. So they've released a series of videos addressing some of these different topics affecting the black community in particular, but really ultimately affecting all of America. And in a few weeks, they will release a 45-minute documentary. And I'm going to show you the trailer for that documentary, and then I'll take questions. And I think the documentary, more than anything, will give you a sense of what we're about and what we hope to accomplish.
On April 4th, 1968, tragedy struck our nation.
Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
The assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. sent shockwaves through communities, families, and individual lives. The man that led the civil rights movement was gone. And many were left wondering, now what? Since that iconic tragedy, what should have brought us together had instead begun to divide. Within the black community, two paths were taken. One large group of the black community took the path that led to an Afrocentric, secular, and political activist journey. The other took the path rooted in the values and principles of their parents and grandparents, a life of strong moral character, and to treat others with love and respect. For us, make good decisions, rooted in the values and principles of those before us. Take care of your family, trusting God, not politicians. No one owes you anything. Go out and work for what you want. When we do that, change happens. We begin to heal our communities. We restore the family. We become strong. This is our prodigal moment. It's time to come home. We are not victims.
I have watched that trailer more than once, and I'm sorry, every time it gets me. Because I think of my parents and my grandparents. And I think they would have killed to live at this point in time in America. And it is such a disservice to them to have this narrative that places on us, who are free to be mayors and TV anchors and you name it, to go to whatever water fountain we want. For us to say we're victims is just, it's beyond bearing for me. So anyway, this film will be released April 4th. Prior to its official release, there's going to be some screenings around the Twin Cities. If you're interested, you watch for more information on that. Okay, now, whoops, I think I'm going the wrong way. Oop. There, that's the slide I was looking for. It's kind of hard to read, but the website for TakeCharge and the mailing address is up there if you are interested in following what's going on with the organization. So, that's all I've got. Any questions?
Question.
Yes.
How large is your school in enrollment right now?
So we're a micro school, which means we're small by design. I've got 15 students. That's not a full enrollment. I think for the space we have, we could have up to 20. But there's also room in this, we're renting from a church, and so there would be room, I think, to go a little bit larger than that. But I'm a believer in small schools, so we will never be a big operation. Yes?
Is there any way to help your school with any knowledge or practical things?
You know, I should have brought a slide that had my school website address on it. If you, who can I give some information to? I will share my contact information, and anybody who's interested can feel free to call me or email me. Yeah, I'm always looking for volunteers. Anybody who knows what's going on in education and cares about kids, I think would be interested in what we're doing, and we'd welcome assistance. Yes?
Are there programs or organizations like yours around the country, or is this a very unique group? Thank you so much for coming, for starters, but is this a unique group? Are there other groups around the country?
Right, and I forgot, I'm supposed to be repeating the question. So the question was, is TakeCharge unique, or are there other groups around the country? Well, first of all, TakeCharge has plans to roll TakeCharge out in other cities. But there are a number of other organizations that have been started by Black conservatives, most often Black Christian conservatives, that have identified, as we have, what the problem is and are trying to resolve it. So it's interesting how the media controls what people hear. And so if you were to look at the media, you would think there are no Black conservatives, that we're all on board with everything that's come out in the last 2 years. And nothing could be farther from the truth. And I think so many of us have just been living quiet lives and trying to mind our own business, but things have gotten to the point where we're like, okay, we can't be silent anymore, we've got to get involved. So there are these organizations and different movements springing up around the country.
What was the process of starting a school, and where do those students come from?
Oh, so obviously I don't have a background in education. I just saw stuff I didn't like. And so I did what I did as a lawyer. I just started researching, you know, what kind of education systems are out there? Why does our system look the way it does? And then I thought, okay, how do you start a school? And I literally Googled, how do you start a school? And it's basically a project. You know, you've got these different steps that you have to go through. You have to incorporate, you have to find a location, you have to know what the laws are, you have to figure out what your curriculum is going to be. You've got the hiring and the financial side of it all. And so it's just this process that you go through. I live in Woodbury, and so my school is located in the East Metro. We are about half a mile from 3M, and my students come from St. Paul, Woodbury, Cottage Grove, Inver Grove Heights, that area. But I would take anybody who's willing to drive.
So my questions are around the Take Charge. So at our club and in my relationships personally and in companies I work with, everybody's trying to get better at this topic. And so you've shown us, another perspective today. What's the best way for someone who's trying to affect change or trying to be a positive influence on this process? And maybe, so it's not so polarized, right? You named these two paths that the Black community has gone down. I'm not saying there's a middle ground, but maybe something about how to approach this topic personally, and then as we're influencing others, and even for our club, because we're all grappling with these questions.
Well, so do you have children?
I do. I have 2 daughters.
Would you accept someone saying, well, those girls can't learn to read because they're girls?
No.
Okay, so would you accept someone saying it's okay for those girls to get up and run around and act crazy in class because they're girls?
No.
No. So the first thing to do is to understand that there are a set of universal success principles. There is a baseline culture that if we're going to be a successful society, we all have to adhere to. So anything you hear that says those Black people, those people of color, which is a term I cannot stand, but it's cool right now. Anybody telling you, well, Black people, they can't be on time, and they can't write English, and you need to stand up and say, stop it. How insulting and condescending can you be? And if you really have some personal bias, then that's something you have to dig around in your own heart and figure out. But I would say just question the narrative that you're getting. There's so many, including Securian. I think I don't know what I would do if I was still working there. I'd probably be fired because, to me, diversity, inclusion, and equity have almost become dirty words because they don't mean what they should mean, which is we should be treating each other with respect. To the extent that my culture is different from yours, but we still have that same basic level of this is how we behave, I don't care if you eat lefse or lutefisk. So that stuff doesn't matter. It's okay. And it's okay to celebrate that stuff. But if you're going to tell me that marriage is for white people, or any of these other crazy, or this whole lawlessness business, we're going to reduce sentences, we're not going to lock people up, we're not going to have bail because there's too many Black people that are being locked up. What? I'm sorry. This makes me just really, 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 really angry. My parents would just be furious. This is not who we are.
I think somehow you have to broaden your work and get it out. Somehow.
Well, that's what we're trying, and actually, I think Take Charge has been pretty effective, considering that we just celebrated our first-year anniversary. The videos, so there's a whole, if you go to the Take Charge website or if you go to YouTube, there's a whole series of videos that have been produced. And the idea is to use the power of social media. Nobody wants to read anymore. So we do these videos, we get them out there, and by the grace of God, they go viral. So that it sparks this conversation. That's what we're doing.
But it's my guess that if you would go to public schools like Edina and say one of your members wants to make a presentation to the students about what you're talking about, you would be turned down.
Oh, absolutely.
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 Right.
So that's where the people who hear this message and get it and agree also have to be brave and speak up. And I've had so many white people tell me, well, I can't say what you're saying. And here's what I told a group a few weeks ago. They already think you're racist. You know, because you're born white, you're a racist. So if they think you're a racist, then don't be afraid. If you think this stuff is nonsense, say so.
So I have a question about an organization in Minneapolis that has similar goals, but before I ask you the question, I talked to the director of that organization, and what you're saying exactly parallels what he said. In fact, he talked about the early settlers. He grew up in Minneapolis, and he said the early settlers in Minneapolis were some of the really solid families, hardworking, two-parent homes, and so he parallels what you're saying about it's a family issue more than anything. And anyway, the name of the organization, Hospitality House in Minneapolis.
They're actually, so we have some strategic alignments with some organizations, and Hospitality House is one of them. Yeah, in fact, I went on a tour of their facility a few months ago.
That was the director.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things you identified was all the data on fathers in the household. And some would argue that it isn't marriage, it's the fact they're living together, whatever. But what's your strategy for turning that around? You know, I think the data is pretty clear, but then the question is, well, how do you do that?
Well, I think, again, the idea of educating people. This is the impact of not having fathers in the home. And I personally think, again, obviously you can tell from my bio, I'm Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. We are an Orthodox body. That kind of biblical teaching, I mean, the churches have got to get their act together. You know, the black church historically has been a bedrock institution in the black community. Sadly, many of them seem to have gone astray. The doctrine that they're preaching is not sound. We've got to turn that around. And I think it really is a matter of making enough noise so that people hear that there is a different way of thinking, and understand that we need to go back to my parents' way of life. Sorry, I'm getting the hook.
Well, I have to thank you. So,
I can sit down?
No, I have something for you. So, thank you very much, once again, for bracing the cold, and for your enjoyable speech and your plain speaking style, introducing us to TakeCharge, but also to your school. And especially the ending video, which was very inspiring. So looking forward to that too. Alfreda, Rotary is a global network of 1.2 million neighbors, friends, and leaders and problem solvers who see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. From literacy and peace to water and health, Rotarians are always working to better our world, and we stay committed to the end. In honor of your presentation, we will make a donation to My Very Own Bed, a local nonprofit that provides new beds to children moving into stable housing. My Very Own Bed gives a new bed, a set of sheets, blanket, pillow, mattress pad, stuffed animal, and books to children who might otherwise go without. So in your honor, we will be doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alfreda. You certainly know how to say it like it is. And, I appreciate your candor. You're outstanding. I honestly don't know how good of a politician you'd make, because you would just tell somebody what you think. So, God bless you. Get things done. Okay, we have a couple opportunities. Ryan Wilson asked to make our club aware of the fact that we have 41 local grant requests. and we don't have enough people on the committee to vet the grants. So if by chance you have a little bit of time and you could vet one of the grant requests, he would greatly appreciate it. So please reach out to Ryan Wilson, who is our local grant chairperson. Yes, that's right. We have one other opportunity that's a little bit unusual that I was just made aware of last night. Wade Toman and his wife Brenda work with Arrive Ministries, which is a resettlement agency, and there is an Afghan family that has moved to Bloomington. It's a family of 8 that has 6 children. The father worked for the Afghan military and assisted the U.S. in their fight against the Taliban. In December, they helped the family move to an apartment in the edge of Uptown. The 3 oldest children are in Minneapolis public schools and began remote learning. The goal for the family is for them to be able to pay their bills in 90 days. The father is in need of a job. He's able to walk if nearby or take a bus. He's very eager to work, but he may need help finding a job because he has very little English. Any leads or contacts or thoughts or ideas would be welcome, and please go to Wade. I'm sure being a janitor, I'm sure being a dishwasher certainly is not beneath this gentleman to get his feet on the ground, and it would really help him a lot. So if you know or you know of anybody that could provide a source for a job, please reach out to Wade and his wife Brenda, and they will give you the information. Looking ahead to infinity and beyond, there are going to be 31 of us tonight. They're going to have a great progressive dinner and some great meals. Next week, my friend Daryl Landstrom, who is a director of the U.S. Ski Association, is going to come and talk about skiing and the Olympic selection process. Now, as some of you know, I'm a pretty bad skier, but Daryl was a ski jumper from Duluth. He's very well known in the ski community. In fact, if you would call Lindsey Vaughn or Jesse Diggins, they would answer the phone. So anyway, great guy. It should be a great meeting. The Rotary Club of Minnesota Vets is having a service project from 1 to 7. We can connect with that. Next Saturday, Rotaract in the afternoon is Feed My Starving Children at the Chanhassen Feed My Starving Children. We can go to that if you'd like. On February 2nd, which is a Wednesday, we have Avocation Happy Hour at CW's Bar and Grill, and I'm so excited. Do you know why I'm excited, Dick Teagan? Because Gordy Lewis and David Wendt are going to talk about their association with Angel Flights. And in the history of the organization, Gordy is number 2 for doing the most Angel Flights. So they're going to have pictures and talk about where they've been and how they've helped people. Again, that's Wednesday, February 2nd at CW's in Bloomington. Then we have the biggest social event of the year. That's the bowling event, Hannelore, at Tuttle's on the 5th. And then Rotaract is having skating to end polio at Centennial Lakes. And then I guess Rotaract is also having a polar plunge. So in honor of Martin Luther King, the time is always right to do what is right. Meeting adjourned.